Buongiorno tutti. Welcome to Florence. I'm at another one of my favorite spots, which is this grand hallway. I don't know how else to describe it, but I'm right in the middle of the Uffizi gallery, outside obviously. It's a big L-shaped or U-shaped building. Right in the middle is this corridor, and it's got great acoustics for one thing, and sometimes they'll have like little concerts out here too. But it's just you can see the Arnolfo Tower there, and back behind me is David, and so what this is a little outdoor gallery, and just another kind of place to hang out and travel in between the different areas. Of course, the Palazzo Vecchio and the Uffizi Gallery and the Ponte Vecchio are actually attached, and I was a little disappointed because there's a secret hallway that goes through all of them, and you wind up on the other side of the river. And it was supposed to open up in 2022, but apparently that got delayed till October, so I'm gonna have to come back to Florence. I'm not gonna be here in October. Or maybe I will, I don't know. You don't know. Anyway, today was another great day. I traveled to the Basilica of Santa Croce, and not only is that a beautiful church and just an amazing place to be, but it's notorious for housing a lot of Florence's artists and important people. And I've mentioned in previous videos how Florence is really big about their they're famous people, and in particular those that were around in the Renaissance. And the amount of people of some level of extreme fame for their art that came from Florence in the Renaissance, right? The late 13 to late 1500s, right? Is truly remarkable, and you have to wonder what's in the water, right? And they revere the sons of Florence, so to speak, and they like to remind you about who comes from here. And one of the things that they do with this outdoor space is they have busts of their famous Florentines, like Donatello, who, incidentally, did a lot of work on the Santa Croce, as well as the Duomo and the Basilica of San Lorenzo, which we talked about yesterday. And so again, another famous person. And I know there's the whole Ninja Turtle thing, so like I get it, but it is a great way to remember the artist in particular. But you walk a little further over here, and of course you're reminded that another famous person from Florence was Leonardo da Vinci, right? He was from Florence and a contemporary of Donatello and Michelangelo and Raphael, because Ninja Turtles. But in all seriousness, like I don't know why they would have such genius in one city within like such a short span of time. And if we really think about it, it's probably because they were interested in the arts, and they invested in the arts, and they were interested in making sure that artists got everything that they needed to do to build great art or create great art, like Dante. I'm going to attempt his name, but it's Dante Alighieri. I think that's right. It's rightish. But he was also from Florence, also during that time period of the Renaissance. And he's a big deal. I've seen statues of him everywhere, including Naples and Rome and a bunch here in Florence, right? You know who else is famous? might know him from some of his writing. Niccolo Machiavelli. You know, also Florence, also during the Renaissance. And of course, that's not all. There's a bunch of artists that aren't as famous, but in the art world they are. I'm not going to pretend to know anything about them, but they're also celebrated around here. Of course, one of the most famous persons from Florence is the big man right there, Galileo. It'd probably get him a little annoyed knowing that he's grouped together with another person and everyone else gets their own little space, but nevertheless. What's also interesting, and why I bring all of this up today, is because I did visit the Santa Croce, where at least 4 of them are buried, including Michelangelo. I told that story the other day about how they basically stole his body. But Machiavelli is also buried at the Santa Croce. Now there is a tribute to Dante. He wasn't actually buried there. He was buried in Ravenna, which I'll get to in a second. But I guess they wanted to save a spot in case. And of course, Galileo is also buried at Santa Croce. And what's interesting about his story is, because he was excommunicated, he couldn't have a Christian birth. So it was only 100 years after his death that they allowed him a Christian birth. So they dug him up and brought him to the chapel. All is forgiven after that much time, right? Galileo's he wasn't the first, but most famous to prove that the Earth revolves around the sun instead of the opposite. And it was a little thing about the church, and the church always wants to be right. And what the church kind of said to him at the time was, yeah, we know. Copernicus, we paid him. He found out. It was so controversial that he wouldn't publish his papers until he died, right? What was that, 1543? So a little after that. But Galileo, he just couldn't leave things alone, and we can imagine in our modern day what type of character Galileo was, because no doubt a genius, I mean, obviously, and contributing to science, and he was one of the people who ignited the scientific revolution, of course, but he did like to stir things up, and so when they asked him to just maybe be quiet about it, he certainly did not feel that that was appropriate and got even louder, so they eventually excommunicated him. But 100 years after his death, it's like, no, he's a Florence boy, get him to the church. And I mentioned Dante as well, because Dante was banished from Florence as well. I can't, right in this moment, I can't remember why. And so was Michelangelo, and of course, so was Leonardo da Vinci. Many others, Machiavelli as well, right? They all, Florence was very proud of its citizens, and it likes to celebrate them, but we forget sometimes that Florence also banished them all. And more often than not, it was about whoever was in charge, whoever was the leader at the time. And a lot of these guys, they were, really favored by the current leader, and in particular the Medicis, who paid for a lot of the artwork here. And of course, when they fall out of favor and get banished themselves, so do their friends, right? And so that's what happens. And Michelangelo took off to Rome. Galileo went north and all over the place. Dante, as I said, went to Ravenna. And he was pretty vocal about being a little angry about his treatment with his old city. But the saddest one, I think, really was Leonardo da Vinci, because he was basically he was revered. He was thought of as a brilliant genius who could do no wrong. And I mean, he was so talented. I mean, art people think it's a shame that he conducted so much science, and scientists think it's a shame because he wasted so much time doing art, because he was such a genius in both, and a lot of other things too. And it was really unfortunate because, you know, again, philosophy, religion gets in the way, right? He was accused of, you know, having a boyfriend, and some people say there was no truth to the matter, but really, who cares, right? And you know, he felt that it didn't, like, he felt particularly hurt because it really didn't matter. Like, he still wasn't being accepted, and they so quickly turned on him, no matter how much he contributed. And he went to Milan, and he contributed a lot there, and eventually lived his final years in France, in a place that I was definitely on the list, clinging to his unfinished Mona Lisa, which he didn't get paid for because he felt it just wasn't finished yet. And it's a sad story. So it's, on one hand, very nice that Florence is proud of its citizens finally, and has gotten over, you know, religious issues. You know, it's just a shame that they eventually they got over the religious issues and are comfortable praising their famous Florentines. But of course, maybe it's a little too late, you know. So kind of a lesson that we should maybe think about, appreciating those of us who are contributing and those of us who aren't, and while we're still around, rather than having to go steal dead bodies, or dig them up to bring them over so that you can bury them in your famous church and stuff. So the other thing worth noting too is, you know, not to end on a bad note about Florence, is, as I mentioned, it isn't a coincidence that Florence was known for great artists and great thinkers, because they invested in them and they appreciated them. And I can't help but think, you know, if you know, obviously Leonardo was a genius, and Michelangelo was a genius, and you know, they had, you know, potential that they turned into talent with a lot of work and a lot of support. And I can't help but think that, you know, there's some kid out there right now who doesn't have a paintbrush or any knowledge of sculpting, or, you know, how the universe works, that we're just not investing in because, you know, that's not important to us. But you don't get a beautiful city like this with the history and culture and influence on history and the rest of the world without investing in your artists. So maybe we should think about doing that. That said, I hope everyone's doing well out there. I certainly am. Tomorrow I'm taking a cooking class. So I've taken 2 others. So one for each stay. And hopefully it's a interesting new cooking style that I can implement a little, so I'm not constantly making the same basic pasta dish every night. But if I don't, and I continue to do that, I'm going to be perfectly happy because it's delicious. And the tagliatelle pasta, I'm liking that. I really like it. So anyway, take care of yourselves out there. We'll chat tomorrow. I'll be discussing Tuscan cuisine. So with that, a domani. Arrivederci. Ciao. Giro la sigaretta.